Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. According to Kenya's Cohesion Commission, the country has 53% probability of electoral violence come the 9th of August polls. The report released in Nairobi on Tuesday also warns that the capital, Nairobi, leads with the tensions with close to 80% chance of electoral violence. The Commission has recommended vigilance to ensure the high-stakes elections is violence-free. The East African nation has experienced political chaos every 5 years during elections. Well, to help us unpack what some of the challenges might be, we're now joined by Dr Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who's a Horn of Africa regional specialist. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me.
So electoral violence in some degree or another is sadly something that we almost expect in Kenya. Yes, 2007 perhaps the worst, but are you expecting more? Do you agree with this assessment that there's a 53% chance, which means it's better than not that you're having electoral violence?
Yeah, the figure 53% that has been provided covers the entire country, and it is an accumulation of what is expected in various counties across the country. So it's not like 53% of there is a 53% chance that there will be violence. There definitely is going to be a violence in some pockets around the country, and for a variety of reasons. One is the proliferation of small arms, organized crime, guns, and the low trust in the Electoral Commission, bribery during election times, and mobilizing along ethnic lines. These are some of the major reasons as to why the NCIC is saying there will be violence in some counties, and the report goes ahead to actually stipulate which areas of Kenya is likely to be violent in the coming elections.
Nairobi is high on that list, and I suppose part of that is it's representative of the whole country. All the tribes are there, immigrants, the whole 9 yards in this one area. Is that the reason why Nairobi is particularly vulnerable?
That's true. Nairobi is a big city, a very popular city with basically all tribes from across the country living in Nairobi. And the areas that are actually suspected that will have violence are the informal settlements like Kibra, Mathare, Kawangware. These are, areas which we normally refer to colloquially as slum areas, where you will find very poor populations, excluded, marginalized, living on the margins of the society, and with inducements of very little monies, they can take up arms and or just basically cause violence in their own neighborhoods and outside their neighborhoods.
Do some politicians drive the violence, and to what end?
They do. Not just some violence. Most of the violence is driven by politicians. One is politicians have this nasty habit of pitting one tribe against the other. This happened in 2007. That's why we got into post-election violence, which became a blot on Kenya's otherwise peaceful nation. So that is one of the reasons. The other reason is, the sheer competition for one to win the presidency. Our system is such that if you win the presidency, you control. The president has, with the presidential powers, control the entire government. Of course, there are three arms of government: judiciary, parliament, and the executive. But when the president wins, he controls over 80% of the government, and the presidential candidates would use any means necessary sometimes to win, to become the president. And this is where the problem arises, because of those politicians that have amassed wealth will use that wealth to bribe voters, to pit voters against others, to spoil voting, or to ensure that voting does not take place in other areas by sponsoring violence, so that there is no voting, and then the chances of their competitors getting votes, go down. The other reason why politicians are the ones that are considered to be the biggest threat in this country and in the coming elections is corruption. Some politicians in Kenya are very corrupt. Just yesterday, the day before yesterday, the government agency responsible for anti-corruption wrote to the Electoral Commission asking it not to clear over 200 politicians that have been stealing money, that have been very corrupt, amassing wealth in order to bribe their way in these coming elections.
Here in South Africa, sadly, we find, particularly at a municipal level, that sometimes things can get quite violent simply because there's a desperation to get into office because of the rewards that come with it. Is that something that you experience in Kenya? I know that your MPs are some of the best paid in the world. Yeah, there is. It's similar to what you've just mentioned in South Africa, the desperation to get into office. When one is elected into office, the member of parliament, for example, at the moment earns about $10,000 per month. Wow. I don't know how much the South African members of parliament earn, but this is one of the highest in the world. In fact, more than in the United Kingdom. A member of parliament in Kenya earns a lot more than a member of parliament from any of the European countries, including United Kingdom, Sweden, or France. And therefore, they want to go there and make more money. Wow. And is that then worth killing for, perpetuating violence for, to make sure of your position? Of course not. But unfortunately, our politicians are not, majority of them, not people with principles, no ethical values. There are few politicians in Kenya that are straight, ethical, with principles, but many are not. And we've seen that even in the current parliament, where we've had quite some dodgy, corrupt, unethical politicians. All right, these elections are a little bit different, and I wonder if that contributes to the concerns. We have a president who's about to leave office, and he's endorsed someone who was his enemy politically before. We have a president who is at war with his current vice president. And I just wonder if this contributes in any way to some of the concern. Yes, it does. And this is the first time we're seeing this kind of a situation where the incumbent president is supporting his former, one who was a competitor to himself in the last two elections. But that is not a big challenge. The big challenge is the seeming bickering and not, or rather misunderstanding between the president and the deputy president.
And many see the deputy president currently as having disrespected the president, not loyal to the president, and that in itself has angered the president and the cabinet, and in some ways it has affected delivery of services, or undermined the delivery of services by the current government. We don't see this kind of situation. For example, in the United States of America, even though Mike Pence disagreed with Donald Trump on some very fundamental issues, they disagreed in private, or he disagreed with the president in private. He won't come out publicly and show a disagreement with the president. But here in Kenya is a different case, and that is quite challenging to our democracy and to governance.
All right, so have there been any early indicators in terms of what might happen in terms of the violence yet? Because it's still early days in the campaigning process officially.
This was a research done to provide some kind of an early warning to law enforcement and to the government. And because now it is clear through solid research conducted by NCIC that there will be violence in Nairobi, in Nakuru, in Kisumu, in Mombasa, and a few other counties. Now, the police service and the security agencies will use that report to ensure that they are adequately prepared to prevent any kind of electoral violence that will happen, or contain any skirmishes very quickly before they degenerate into an all-out violence between communities in those counties that have been identified.
Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, always great talking to you. Thank you so much indeed. Asante sana. Kwaheri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening. All right. Interesting chat ahead of the August elections in Kenya, that electoral violence sadly being predicted. Some areas probably have a higher chance than others. Nairobi is one of them. And we were just chatting there about the figures that the members of parliament in Kenya get in terms of a salary. And they earn 155,000 Rand a month. 155,000 Rand a month. And if you're an MP in South Africa, you're only getting 94,000. So that's the difference between a Kenyan